Diversity, equity, and inclusion have never been more at the heart of conversations, whether it is in the media, in our personal lives, or in the workplace. Today, we are welcoming Dijana, who is the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Wellbeing Lead at PwC Luxembourg, as well as Jennifer, People with Disability Community Lead at Amazon and Women's in Leadership. We will discuss the main challenges and benefits of diversity, equity and inclusion in the workplace and why it is so important. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me here. Excited to be here today.
Doing really, really well. Thank you also for inviting me. And I'm really happy that I get to do this with Jenny.
As diversity, equity and inclusion has for a few years now been a hot topic for organizations, could you please explain why it is so important to include it in organization strategies?
You don't want a single view on how you want to shape the future, I think. And that's why diversity comes in as being so important. Because if you have a certain type of leaders always sitting in the room and always going the same direction, always taking the same direction of decisions, it's going to get you to a non-innovative and a non-diverse solution in the end. And you need to have the diversity in the room to get a different viewpoint of things, to get a different angle to things. And only that gives you the 360 view to make the right decisions at the right time. And I think that's something we've been probably lacking in the future, in the past. But we see it, at least from the Amazon perspective, being done much, much better nowadays. Even having a female at the table when you decide about diversity plans is giving you a different output than what you had before when only men were deciding about the future of women. So I think making a huge, huge impact on like the general plans that you are creating and how you are viewing things, that's for me the importance of diversity.
Thanks, Jenny. I really like this question because it covers 3 dimensions: diversity, equity, and inclusion, which from a PwC perspective is what we are covering now. Looking at PwC Global, we actually are focusing more on inclusion and diversity, and we were very keen on putting in the equity as well. And everything Jenny says is completely true, and it's a red thread through it all. It means that you cannot have diversity, but you actually have to have equity and inclusion, because diversity is what you bring through the door, but inclusion is actually what you do with it. So it's not just enough of thinking about, okay, let's bring in more nationalities, more women, more people with disabilities, etc., and we're going to be done. No, there's much more work to be done. We need to look at what barriers do minorities, women, etc., face to then be able to thrive at a company, to then finally build that inclusive working environment. And then, of course, something we also include here is well-being. Mm-hmm. So we are the diversity, equity, inclusion, and well-being team. And it really matches all together because the final aim of it all is that our people thrive and feel well at the company. But we cannot do that if everyone is exactly the same, looks the same, has the same way of thinking, comes from the same background, etc., etc. And all of us as human beings, we are a beautiful tree, but we blossom, and that's the only thing you see. But there's so much deeper stuff in us that makes us unique, and we need to value that. And I also wanted to connect that also with the values that we have. How can you reimagine the possible if everyone thinks the same? You have to have that diversity in thoughts to bring something new to the table, something innovative, and innovation drives a company. So there you also have your business case.
What also brings us to our next question. Yeah. What are the human and the corporate benefits of a DEI strategy?
I think from a human perspective, and something I can actually look back from my experience, you are attracting, and I keep going back to women, but you are attracting women as a female leader way beyond than a male leader could, I think. So that's what I'm seeing in my org, that are females coming and really targeting me and saying, like, I would really want to work for a female leader. do you have any space? Are there any vacancies? And it's like, wow, that's impressive. I think that's what's making the difference. You are doing kind of marketing for yourself without even wanting to do it. You're just doing it naturally. And I think that's the benefit, because you're attracting immediately a completely different target group than you did before. And it can be intimidating coming from real estate, actually. Being the only female very often in a room, it feels a bit like, okay, is anyone interested in my opinion here? And if you're not the only one, you probably feel a bit more empowered and backed up by someone else in the room versus just sitting there and being the unique voice. And it's like, okay, am I really speaking up now, or I probably shut up and not give my opinion? But I think that's something you also learn. And what we've gone through in the past years is really like you need to give that angle and you need to give that room in order to attract that. And that's what's giving you the benefits of a DEI strategy. You're attracting different talents. You're attracting different retention as well within your folks that you have. And I think you're making a huge impact also on the well-being that you've been mentioning before, Diana. So I think that it's a mix of all. And what is the difference between human and corporate benefits? It's actually, I think it needs to be a mix of both. It's not that you could say one is just that or one is just that. It's the mix of both that is making the ideal constellation for having the DEI strategy not only implemented, but living and breathing it every day. And for some areas, it's super hard, actually, for, like you've been mentioning, people with disabilities. Finding the space and really making it easy for them to feel integrated into the workspace. I think you can give any corporate benefit you like. If you don't feel humanly welcome, it doesn't give you anything, right? So I think it's really that one needs to come together with the other one. And only in constellation with the two, it can work in a perfect way.
I love the constellation part. And I totally agree with everything you said, Jenny, especially about the role models. Role modeling is really big within DEI. So again, the corporations are humans. Corporations don't exist without humans, meaning the biggest investment you need to make is in your people. DEI and well-being is part of ESG. ESG is pretty big at PwC. We are part of the S, the social, which means that our first and biggest aim at the moment is to focus on our people, to bringing in diversity of people, to making our people feel included, belonging, and feeling well, essentially. Then inclusion is utterly important. Because again, what do you do with the diversity? You need to start thinking about how do I create that psychologically safe environment so that our people can actually thrive and be authentic and bring their creativity. And that's where the link is with the benefits of the corporations, because if people are safe to share their ideas, even if they might be stupid, but one of them will be amazing, if they are able to actually be creative, then you will have less turnover, people will stay, and then you will have to invest less money in recruiting other people. And your clients are going to feel the benefits of the innovation that your people bring.
Totally aligned. I think we could run a
yes,
company.
we could also just talk about this for hours and hours and hours,
exactly.
right?
No, but I think it's really, as you say, it needs to come one with the other. If you just focus on one, it's never going to work. And we've been seeing that, like putting ourselves DEI goals, that you need to hire that and that many people of that group each year. You need to do that and that. You need to have a proper retention policy behind it as well. So how do you keep that environment that they feel welcomed and that they feel integrated into everything we do? So it's not only about getting it done on the inbound side. So like inputs you are getting, I'm talking very much Amazon language.
Yeah.
But it's all about like keeping and what you're getting out of it. And I think the results just play for or speak for themselves, because you would see that the results in general are getting better with more diversity in the team.
Indeed. Sorry. And just to add to that, I also think we just have to be realistic about it. It's 2024. What worked 30 years ago doesn't work anymore. What our future workforce wants is not maybe what our workforce 30 years ago wanted. How they thrived is not how we consider thriving anymore. There is many more aspects to it, and we just have to be conscious of that. So just making money constantly is not maybe what will keep people at the firm.
And you just already briefly touched on it already. what would you say are the main challenges of a diverse and inclusive workplace?
Do you want me to go first this time?
You go.
Okay. And I think you will notice, a correlation there. It always starts with leadership. DEI and well-being is not new, but as a trend, as a focus area, as a hot topic, it's been around, at least in Europe, for maybe the past 5, 6, 7 years. So it's still something we work on, meaning from a leadership perspective. What is it in for me and why do I need to do that? So a challenge can be if you don't have your leadership buy-in. I'm very proud to say at PwC, we really have a buy-in from our leaders. From the biggest top, our DEI leader at the firm is Mark Schoenberg. He is within the partnership. So we really have that, but that can be a big blocker for making anything happen. Then, of course, the more diversity you have, the more complex your working environment becomes. So you really have to put a lot of emphasis on working on harmonizing the different cultures, the different genders, the different languages we have. So that's where inclusion comes in and is really a big ship sort of to tackle. And then also one thing that I think you've probably also heard at Amazon, it's the maturity model within DEI. Where are you in the space when it comes to investing in DEI? Are you at the starting point? Have you only started thinking about it? Or are you actually lightning years before other companies and already have created a safe working environment? So it's also really thinking about when you want to think about DEI, what is our firm's maturity model to know, are we just at the starting point of investing in diversity, or are we already at the point where diversity is sort of, let's say, done? Now, what do we do with that diversity? So I would say also if that can be a challenge if you're not thinking about that.
I think your complexity that you mentioned is the biggest point to address, because you have to give everyone space in the room. Just imagine a meeting where you have 50-50 men, women, and then you have like different ethnic backgrounds, you have different languages, all of that, accommodating everyone's view and everyone's like input they want to give, and making sure that everyone is being heard. That's giving a complex situation that we never had before, I think. I mean, we've done it to a certain extent, but not like asking everyone, what is your think about it? So how do you see that? And I think that complexity is hard to overcome. But as you said, if the leaders at highest level are living and breathing it every day, I think that's what's telling the rest of the teams, even at lower levels, yes, exactly. This person is making time for it, first of all. And secondly, it's showing me that they are investing into it, because it's effectively what you're doing is an investment into your biggest treasure that you have as a company, because it's your people. Without the people, nothing would work. And if you're not investing into your people, it's exactly that point. You're losing the best people, which you don't want to. And I think that part of, again, it's going back to the retention policy. If you address that right, so work on like, how do I incorporate the diversity firsthand into my everyday business, but then on the other hand, how do I incorporate it into the retention policy? What do I want to do for my people? How much do I want to give and invest into them? And that is like the package that you need to have. So exactly as you said, but the point of what does that do to my day-to-day business? It's clearly making it more complex, but the outputs you're getting is giving you more, right? So because the payback you're getting from it is the best you can get out of it.
Indeed. And honestly, I know within our world, and especially my world, often being asked, so what is it in for me? Why should I do this? Well, basically the output, will it actually bring me more business? There is so much data nowadays. A lot of it is from the US, of course, because their maturity level is higher than in Europe when it comes to focusing on DEI. But there is a lot of proof of saying that if you invest just in the simplicity of diversity, your business will actually thrive. And like I mentioned before, innovation as well. If you have a big diversity of students, one coming from a university of technology, the other one were university of languages, design, this and that. If you bring them all to one team that has to innovate on something that we're trying to sell to the client, then you're going to have a bigger success than if everyone came from the same background, right? Just wanted to add that to your point.
I think job satisfaction has become in the value chain of individuals much higher than it was years ago. So to your point, We are not anymore where we were 50 years ago, where you would just change your job because you're getting 50 euros more. At that time in Germany, it was Deutsche Mark, right? But now it's about, okay, what else am I being offered by this employer, and what is the benefit I'm actually getting out of it in total? If I feel like I'm being part of something, and I think diversity is actually giving you that, I'm being part of it, that is what's making you probably more satisfied in your job than just being a number and no one cares about you. So I think that aspect needs to be taken into account. Also, it's not only for hiring, it's about, in general, the investment into people that you are making. I think that's the overall, I would say.
Indeed. And I heard it, I don't remember anymore where, if somebody is new, it's the first time that they're employed, it's their job. How will they know if we're great or if we're not great? They will just know what they know from us. Well, we live in a global world with a lot of information sharing that happens instantly. People connect very easily to each other. So even though you don't really have any working experience prior to Amazon or PwC or anything else, very soon it will be known what kind of working environment you do have as a firm, because people talk and people share and people are online. You can go on Glassdoor, you can go on Reddit, you can read about it. So just assuming that, the first experience is going to be with us, it's a huge impact we have, because, our employees are also our employer brand, not just the candidates that we are actually recruiting, but also how do we treat our people? They would talk about it, so we can be much better. We are great, and we can be much better with investing in our people.
And how are we getting there? What is the key to leading a successful DEI agenda?
So it's actually 2 points, I think, that are most important for me. It's, first of all, what I mentioned earlier, that the leadership team really needs to live and breathe it every day. It's nothing that I just put on a piece of paper. I write a document about, it's like, here's your plan, you go and execute. I need to really incorporate that into my day-to-day business. I need to make sure that I'm being inclusive, that I'm giving equity to everyone within my workforce, but also that I integrate the different parts. But on the employee side, I think it's allowing you to be your authentic self. That's the point. If you can't be yourself and you have to fit into, into a certain bunch of people or a certain group, and you have to be like that, you never feel welcomed, you never feel integrated. So I think these are the 2 leading ones that you have to give, first of all, as a leadership team or as a company, and secondly, as the employee yourself. So to be yourself and not try to fit in somewhere. I mean, it's like working in a bank, right? Some people would say, I would never want to wear a suit every day. That's not me, right? But others say, it's like, I'm enjoying it so much. That's exactly me. And I think that's the point of being your authentic self. In Amazon, you can come with your flip-flops in summer if you want to. It's like, okay, if you feel comfortable and that's your authentic self, go for it. That's totally fine. But if you want to come, dressed up in a suit, that's also okay. No one is going to look at you as like, what's happening with this person? Or if you're wearing your turban, it's totally fine. Everyone should be accepted the way they are. And that's like the reflection of both the leadership team as much as the employee themselves.
I fully agree to that. That was my first point. I wanted to raise again the leadership. So the biggest challenge is also your biggest driver. It can the DEI agenda can be very successful if you have the leadership buy-in. Well, I mean, you're asking the DEI person why DEI, right? It's because our people want it. Our people of all generations, they want to have DEI. They want to work in diverse teams. They want to feel included at the firm. They want to feel well-being. The equity piece is perhaps something that we really need to spend time working on. What does it actually mean within the remit of DEI, the equitable piece? To a second point, it's also really then building the understanding, if you have spent time building the understanding among your people why DEI matters, then it's going to be a successful DEI agenda. And it can be done one-on-one with people. It can be done via training. I should probably say it should be done with so many different aspects because it's quite complex. So training is great. One-on-one talks is great. Different events, raising awareness on different topics. As probably, Ann-Katrin, we have now at PwC 5 different networks. Here we call them networks. Amazon, the affinity groups.
Okay.
Yes. So we are focusing, of course, on women and men. So the gender aspect. We're focusing on LGBTQ+ from a Shine perspective. Then Let's Embrace is about multiculturalism. SAGE, which stands for Seeking Age and Generational Empathy, looks at generational gaps and collaboration. And then Ability Diversity looks at disability. Those networks are going to create events and awareness on these different topics that we have within DEI. So it's really important that we as employees at the firm attend these events, go to these workshops and these trainings to raise our awareness of why DEI actually matters. And then I mentioned the equity piece. It's really important that in the agenda we work really on building barrier-free processes so that everyone can thrive in their own possibilities. And that's the only way, actually, from my perspective. There's many other ways, but I think this is a very important part to keeping our people, the retention piece. If we show our people that we're investing in what is your unique self, what are your unique needs, but we want you to thrive, then they will also stay with us.
And that you care. I think that's the most important one. Because in addition to that, I think you can, whatever you want to tell, you can tell. And some people are better at talking, others are less good at talking. But just talking doesn't really mean that you are incorporating it. I think the point of really deeply caring about your people and the EQ aspect of leaders is super, super important. You might have a super smart person, but being very, very weak on the EQ side, I think this person will never succeed in a way as others could do, because you need, again, the balance of both. And there probably training comes in. You can train it to a certain extent, but EQ is something I think you need to have it in yourself. It's hard to learn if you don't have it. But we see that you can do a lot with training. So I think it's important to really deeply care about what you want to incorporate within your DEI strategy.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that word because it's actually one of our values at PwC. It's called care. Do you want to talk about the leadership principles?
Yeah,
there are many. Amazonian slang. Sorry.
And what do you think the perfectly diverse and inclusive work environment should look like? Big question.
I actually wrote in my notes, ha 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 ha. Because I love the word perfect. I think let's be realistic. We are not perfect. Nothing is perfect. So there is no perfection because it's humans who create everything around us. And again, we're not perfect. I really, really do truly believe in the motto that we have in DEI at PwC, and it is DEI and well-being in everything we do. So once we actually accomplish that it's part of our DEI, it's part of our DNA, the way we talk about it, the way we interact with each other, the way we actually do business, then I think then we're going to be doing amazingly. Not perfect, because it's not going to be that way, but I think that brings us pretty close to it.
Aligned. And I think the point of perfect is different for every individual. So you might define your perfect as completely different than I do. So I think that perfect is always a piece of interpretation that we should think about carefully and how to use that. And it might mean for you like a yellow painted room with flowers on it, whilst for me it's like the rosy, I don't know, whatever, couch that I love to sit on. So I think that is like really for everyone to decide themselves what is the perfect environment for me, and possibly just share it with your leadership, saying it's like, you know what, it would make me feel way more comfortable if the chairs in the meeting room would actually look like that. Just give it a thought, give it a try. Maybe leadership team is going to react to it and do something about it. But it's simple things. I think you need to be feeling really safe in the environment overall to be able to share what does perfect look for you. Because if you are a person with a disability, right, you might not even feel comfortable sharing it. So at that time, it's already hard to address it because as an employer, you would never know what does the perfect look for this person. So I think that way of creating that, comfortable way of that you can really be yourself, and then being able to share what perfect might or near perfect amazing is actually a good word, might look for you, that is what we could target to achieve. But I don't think we can get to a way that we would call it perfect for everyone.
And just if I can build on that, I really hope that within the next couple of years here, we can build an environment where it's okay to ask questions, right? We don't know everything, and it's okay to not know everything. So to build on what you said, that a person feels safe enough to actually say, hey, I would love if we had X, Y, Z. It would also be great if we really build that culture within our firm where our leaders, and leaders is actually everyone and anyone, not just our partners, but everyone and anyone feels that they can ask the question, what would you need? What is good to you? What is your view on this? And have open conversations, because that's what I mentioned before. If you have one-on-one conversations, then you can maybe a little bit freer share your opinions. But if we create that opportunity, that we create that environment where people feel that they can actually be asking those questions and losing that fear of, as a leader, I need to look perfect. I need to look like I know it all. I need to look like I'm together. In the end, we're all humans. And I think we also resonate very well to people who show that they're human. So I think there is that twofold, also being safe as a person to say, I need this, but also for people probably above us to actually also say, hey, what do you need? That would be lovely.
Getting to actually what you need is already a very difficult task, because if you ask people what do you want and what do you feel like is the right way for you, often people don't have an idea about that. So it's like talking about career, for example. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Famous question in interviews. But I would tell you that 80% of the people do not have an idea of where they sit in 5 years. There is not like a personal vision of, I would probably want to sit in that chair, or I would like to do that job. And probably when you get to it, you recognize, it's probably not the right job for me. So I think diversity and the perfect environment and workplace is probably the same. You have an imagination of what it might look like, but as we haven't experienced it in that extent, it's hard to say, like, what would it look like? So define it for yourself and probably get clarity for yourself as an employer. Then when you come to the point that you feel safe and comfortable with sharing, go for it, give it a try. But I would probably bet on it that 50-50 might not be the right addressing of the needs or what you think is perfect being defined for you now.
Well, that brings us to the end of this podcast. Thanks very, very much to both of you for all those insights. I really appreciated the experience you had and what you shared with us. So thank you again very much for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
My pleasure as well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today. That it is for today's episode. And if you don't want to miss out on our upcoming stories, hit subscribe and feel free to share. Let us know what you think. Thank you for listening, and see you for the next episode of Casual Side.